Hi, I'm Jared MacEachern, bass player for Machine Head, and you're watching ForBassPlayersOnly.com.
Hi, and welcome to ForBassPlayersOnly.com. I'm John Liebman, founder and first baseman. You know, a lot of people think they're too old or it's too late for them to learn how to play an instrument. So I created ForBassPlayersOnly.com for people over 50 who want to play bass, because I believe you're never too old and it's never too late to experience the joy and the pleasure of making music. ForBassPlayersOnly.com. That's what we're all about. We've got a very special guest this week. I'm excited about it. I've been looking forward to speaking with him. Jared MacEachern, best known as the longtime bass player for Machine Head, well established in the rock world. He's also played guitar and sang with Sanctity. Machine Head had a new album released last summer of Kingdom and Crown that's been getting a lot of attention. We're certainly going to talk about that. Hello, Jared, and welcome to ForBassPlayersOnly.com.
Hi there, John. Thanks for having me.
It's good to have you. I want to start, we'll get to the album, but I've got some stuff I want to ask you about you, because you strike me as the kind of guy that can fill in pretty much anywhere you're needed. You need a bass player, I can cover it. You need a guitar player, you need some vocals, So tell me about the early days, your musical upbringing, musical family, brothers and sisters, records playing. What attracted you to the bass?
Okay, well, so this is from the beginning. Okay, I came up in a musical family. I grew up in the choir at church. My mom was big on singing, so I started singing when I was 5. And I got a lot of serious training through that. My whole family was there. It was one of her favorite things. At 10, I picked up the violin because I was allowed to join the orchestra in 5th grade, but I had to wait till 6th grade to join the band. And I was like, I don't want to wait. So I decided to play violin. Did that for 2 years. And then when I got to middle school, the teacher needed a bass player. And I volunteered because there was only one of him. And there was 8 other violin players. I was like, well, I'd rather do the thing that not everybody else is doing.
Upright bass or electric?
Upright concert orchestra bass.
Cool.
And then I fell in love with it. And, just the depth and those low tones were really great. And, that collaboration, filling that spot in the collaboration. That year, I also got my first bass guitar. And shortly after that, started my first band with my friend that got his first drum set the same year. So it all kind of happened really quickly then. And I just, like I said, I fell in love with bass, and I always had training. I was in orchestra, I took private lessons. I did go to college for a little bit, and took music education. But then I figured that playing in a real band was better than sitting in a classroom. So I joined the fellows in Sanctity. At the time, they had a great bass player. And they needed a guitar player. So I just kind of filled in because I was like, well, I guess I could make that happen, and do that and sing at the same time. And then, I after my daughter was born, I kind of took a bit of a hiatus from the music world. And, but then after a few years, really got back into bass and really, I don't know, just had almost like a second awakening. Really, figuring out my love for bass and where it sits in the mix and where it sits in the music. And it was shortly after that I joined Machine Head, and I just really have jumped 100% into that role of just laying it down, keeping it solid, letting everybody else do what they need to do. And it's just been a real joy for me to, really get to make these songs heavy.
It's funny because I've interviewed just about 800 bass players, and it's the same story for so many people. I wanted to play guitar, but we already have plenty of guitar players. That was my story. You can play guitar and not be in the band, or you can play bass and be in the band. Yeah. It almost sounds like you were the opposite. Doesn't sound like you took up guitar reluctantly, but it doesn't sound like it was your first real love, what you really wanted to do initially.
Yeah, no, it wasn't really. I mean, I obviously, love playing, any instrument that I can, if I can get it to make sound and do it with other people and have it be in tune, then I can enjoy it. But yeah, it was really about bass. Although when I started when I got that first bass and I started my first band, even then at that young of age, I was playing bass and singing. And, but I really was kind of playing it a lot like a guitar. I had tons of distortion, lots of strumming, just trying to, make all the sounds at once with just me and a drummer. So, but yeah, it was always just about, the lower frequencies, 4 strings, sometimes 5, and just really, kind of doing more with less. Sometimes it's just nice to just hold it down super solid, and that's exactly what it needs, and that's what feels best, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah, we have a lot in common. We're from musical families. I took violin for, I think it was around 3rd grade or so, and boy, it's I just gotta my family, listening to a 3rd grader learn the violin. That must have been quite a sound.
Yeah.
I took drum lessons for a while too. It's funny. My mom always joked. She says the rehearsals were always at the drummer's house because he's the one
with all the stuff.
Yeah. When you studied classical, so that was it with the bow and Simandl method and all that stuff.
Yep. But yeah, I mean, I took orchestra all through high school, and even when I went to college for a little while, I also was in the jazz band. On the upright bass. I wanted to play bass guitar, but my jazz teacher insisted that I played the doghouse because it was he liked that tone better. So that was interesting. I didn't get too deep down the jazz rabbit hole. But I did learn, I learned some, good things and have a decent appreciation for that genre.
I was going to ask you about your rock influences, but I'll take just a quick detour here. What about in the jazz world? Mingus, Ray Brown.
Definitely Charlie Mingus. I mean, that was just. That whole other side of the upright bass that was just I don't know, so cool. Like, it was just cool. It could be. It was one of the first times where I would hear songs that could be like fast, but not loud. You know what I mean? And have it sound like just really, and really, really, really intriguing. So, I mean, I'm nowhere near that skill level, but it was really cool to listen to, and possibly I may have brought some of those techniques or influences over to some of my playing at times, but I'm primarily a hard rock and heavy metal bass player.
I'm sure you did without realizing it. So what about in the rock world, the bass guitar and rock and roll? What kind of influences did you have? Who were they? I know.
Well, my earliest influences for bass were Cliff Burton and Les Claypool. I mean, obviously, Les's skills at, making the bass sound a way that I'd never heard it before, and my sister even was like, hey, you should check this out. He makes it sound like a guitar. And I'm like, no, it doesn't sound like a guitar, but it definitely sounds way different. But really it's Cliff Burton for me. He was just such a huge influence on, as with the concept of like lead bass, and also songwriting. He wrote so much of that early Metallica stuff, and he would record versions that was like all the parts with just bass, solos and everything, and be like, here guys, I've got this song. So, and just his and his stage presence and his attitude and just the whole thing, I was just, I was blown away. It was really impressive on me. Getting into heavy music and loving bass and having that kind of icon to kind of, to look up to.
We could only wonder what he would have sounded like had he.
I know. 24. He died when he was 24, and I think about 24-year-olds today, and I'm like, you guys are kids. I'm like, you're still kids. It's crazy. I had I got to visit his gravesite in Sweden, right where the crash was, and down the road there's a museum, and it was heavy. It was really heavy. Like I said, just think about how young he was, like how talented and how young he was in Metallica for 4 years.
That's about right. Yeah.
That's not a long time, but just made such an impact, and is still just such an icon, forever young. You know what I mean? He's just, he'll always be just that major rager.
Well, even Jocko was a bit older. He was 35, but that's still awfully
Yeah,
young.
it's too young. It's too young.
Well, let's talk about happier things like Of Kingdom and Crown. First of all, what does the title mean? What does that refer to?
I think it's a reference to the legacy that Rob and Machine Head have built over the years. And but I believe it also ties into the, there's a concept with the album that there's these two characters that are going through their own parallel trials and suffering and redemption. And I think that, that's a referral to the persistence in the pursuit of, some goal, some lofty goal, or some, conquering some fear, or conquering trials in life. So I really think it's a reference to that.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about the characters. This is not, hey, let's sit down and write some tunes. I mean, this is quite a project, quite an undertaking. I mean, even down to the packaging. How many different versions of vinyl and cassettes and all kinds of, wow, it's and even CDs but it does get pretty deep overall. Can you elaborate a little bit more about what's behind it? I mean, you touched on it a little bit, but the two characters and what's the message? What does the band want people to walk away thinking and feeling after experiencing this album?
I think I think what it's really about is a connection to the notion that everybody goes through bad shit in their life, excuse me. And, it's, and us, we go through the same things that, people deal with every day. And it's just a real call to the commonality of the struggle. It's like, we're all going through it right now. Like, we don't, we want people to focus on, bonding through adversity rather than, drawing lines in the sand and keeping people out and exclusionary thought patterns. But I think ultimately it's about redemption and finding peace and being, in a place that you can be, happy with. It still might not be perfect, but something that you can take some joy from. That's what it, that's how it feels, in my heart when I listen to it and I play these songs. Of course, everybody takes it different. That's art, and we can't say this is what it's supposed to mean, but to me, those are some of the deep underlying themes.
I hope it's okay to bring this up, but you've spoken pretty openly about your own anxiety and depression and therapy. How are you, first of all?
I'm doing well. I mean, I'll be honest, tour helped. It was good to, be back at work and feel more of a sense of, normalcy that has been, missing for a lot of people over the past few years, obviously. And also sometimes it's just simple things like the weather, like seasonal affect. Like if it's cloudy for weeks on end, I'm just kind of like, and we live in the woods, so we don't get tons of sun. So I try to get out and, get my walks and, get some sunlight on my skin. But no, I'm doing well. There's plenty to do. And, Rob and I are going to get back to the streaming, the weekly streaming. We're working on some more tour dates for this year. So I've got stuff to keep me busy.
That's good. You must be happy to be out. I mean, I looked at the dates when the album was recorded, and it looked pretty much like 100% during COVID.
Yeah. And it was a bit of a different process. It was very spread out. I mean, it definitely wasn't, maybe the old way that we had done it, where we're literally crunching out songs for sometimes almost a year. And then going into the studio for like 3 to 4 months straight every day. It was a bit of a different process. I'd say My Hands Are Empty was one of the first songs written for the album. I mean, that was the one with the first video and was released in 2020. And then, what we did was we would work on songs and we would just go down the hall to Shark Bite Studios in Oakland and just kind of record, a couple songs. If they were ready and done and we felt like they were completed, we would just go in and record them for a few days, and then we would come back and work on other stuff. And so it was a different process, interesting, more spread out. But despite all that, the cohesion on the record is just phenomenal. I mean, despite those songs being so spread out when we wrote them, they come together in a way, none of them feel old, and they run exactly how they should run. And it just really came together just amazingly as a whole.
Other than being spread out time-wise, you were actually, there was no remote. I mean, everybody was in the same place in the studio.
Yeah, Rob and I were in the studio. Vogue recorded solos remotely. Matt helped us work on the drum parts, but he wasn't able to get his drums recorded. So we hired a local Oakland drummer named Naveen Copperweiss, who has played in a band. Entheos is his current band. He was in a band called Animals as Leaders. Which if anybody out there is an appreciation of jazz, you should check out Animals as Leaders. It's heavy, but it's very progressive and fusiony metal. It's very cool. Very cool. But he's a great drummer. But Rob's big, especially on drums. He likes to be there and he likes to be like, okay, make it sound like Dave Lombardo, or do a roll like any said drummer from some certain song, and he kind of he really likes to work with the drums like that. So that was the main advantage of having Naveen here with us. But Matt did a lot of work on helping with those parts, and he plays them flawlessly, and we're really glad to have him.
You've got me thinking, Animals as Leaders. Was that Tosin Abasi?
Yes.
Okay, I saw him with the Generation X tour, Yngwie Malmsteen and Steve.
Oh, yeah.
Nuno Betancourt, and I actually went there because I interviewed Pete Griffin, and he had 2 4-strings and 2 5-strings and this tuning and that tuning and this, because there are 5 different distinct acts, and he had to really have your head on for that. I'm trying to think what Zach Wilde. That was the other one.
Oh, wow. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So it was fun. But, I shouldn't say this, but by the end of the evening, I said, I can't stand it anymore.
I can't take any more solos. Just play the song.
And I went with a buddy, and it was so loud. I was sitting right next to him, and I couldn't talk to him. So I texted him. He's like 6 inches away from me. I said, do you think if we left now, we would feel like we're missing anything? Oh, maybe I'll edit that out. Maybe I won't. I don't know. Let's talk about your gear: basses, amps, strings, effects.
Okay.
All right. Anyway.
I play ESP basses.
Oh, yeah.
My two main basses currently are it's their custom jazz model, which is called a J4. I think it's ash with a maple neck and a really cool reverse pointy headstock, black gloss, gold hardware, EMG pickups. I've got a PJ set in that. My other main bass is their Surveyor model, which is like a P bass, and that also has got the same PJ configuration as the other bass. That one's a lot heavier and a bit darker, but it's a great, super solid bass. As for gear, I use Dunlop steel core strings, 50, 70, 95, 120.
That's pretty heavy.
Yeah, that's pretty. Although I've heard people recommend, they're like, well, even for we play a bit lower in tuning. I usually tune to B, F sharp, B, E, but it's B that's like, if you have the like the Boss tuner with the dots. It's basically all the way over to the right. And that's kind of where we sit. We call it plus 40 cents on the tuner, I guess, or however you want to say it. So I've had people recommend I use a 130, but I play a 130 on some lower tune songs, and it's just, I don't know, it's real big. I can't play very fast on it. So the 120 is good for me.
Floppy.
I do use a pick. Machine Head's a pick band. I need the accuracy and the tone, that heavy scraping pick tone. I use Dunlop picks. As for gear, I think what I've settled on recently is I have a Sans amp fly rig, the little blue one with the compressor and the Sans amp and the overdrive and the chorus. I have one of those. Actually, what I start with, I've got a Dunlop bass wah, and I've got a Boss bass chorus pedal. I have the Boss ODB1 overdrive pedal, and that's all in front of the Sans amp fly rig.
Tell me more about the Sans amp. Tech21, I've never heard a negative word about anything.
Oh my gosh, they're classic. Like, their stuff has been legit since like the 70s. I mean, it's an unmistakable tone. It's super reliable. It's very simple. I mean, it's literally just, so much rock tone from the 80s and 90s for bass. And, and it's just literally, you can just do it with a pedal this big, and it's great stuff. And they've got, they've made custom amps. I've tried the Doug Pinnick signature amp, which was amazing. They've got a Geddy Lee model.
Yeah. Doug's name always comes up in these conversations. Yeah, the Geddy Lee, like you said.
Yeah. But well, Doug's tone is just, it's crazy. So good, and a lot of, and Tech21 was there for that. And, but I just, I kind of tried it on a whim, this new pedal. I thought it real fascinating that it had the compressor on it, because I've got some compressors in the rack, but I wanted something that was just much more compact and I can use anywhere. And that's the whole idea, is that literally just this, I mean, it weighs like 2 pounds. It's actually kind of flimsy. I'm afraid I'm going to break it. But it comes in a box if you, like a tin box if you want to keep it in there. But yeah, and I tried it, and it just immediately was like, oh wow, that's good. That's real good. And just needed to add a little bit of distortion on the front with that ODB, which gets a good grit without losing a lot of the low end. And because my tone bass wise is actually typically a lot closer to the guitars, because my tone fills in almost like an extra half a guitar in a lot of places, with a lot of distortion and a lot of gank on it. But these past few tours, getting back on the road, I've really settled on this fly rig. And I mean, I can literally have a pedal board that's got, basically the 4 pedals on it, and that's it. Like, I don't even need a rack in the back. I was running through some Kempers for a few years, and they were good, but yeah. And I just wanted to simplify it. So I really focused on that, the Sans amp fly rig setup, and we're loving it. Yeah.
Let's talk about bass and playing bass and learning bass. Excuse me. For Bass Players Only is a bass instruction site. And you heard me at the beginning. I said, you're not too old, people over 50. I ended up kind of morphing into that, because that's who I've been attracting. Mostly men in their 50s, 60s, 70s. They've always wanted to do this, and they're not trying to become a professional bass player and tour all over the world. They just want to play some classic rock riffs and some blues shuffles and walking bass lines or whatever it is. And some of the things that come with being in your 50s, 60s, 70s are things like arthritis and tendonitis, and a lot of people are recovering from surgery. And so I tell you that just to set a context and to give you an idea of who the students are here. So in that context, what advice do you have for somebody like that who wants to learn how to play bass? What should they be thinking about, focusing on, concentrating on?
Well, one of the ways that I learned, and was able to practice a lot of what I wanted to play, was just literally putting on an album. And, I know this isn't true for everybody, but I learn a lot by ear. I can listen and repeat pretty much immediately, or something close. And I can get to it like fairly quickly. Like I can grasp a song like really quick and come up with something. So, but as far as, learning to play, I would find some songs that you want to learn. And, because that's, I feel is going to give you a lot of the motivation, because that's, with the type of website that this is, I feel like that's what most people would want to do, is play along with songs that they enjoy, playing along with songs from their youth that they always liked. And, just kind of like, be in the band, and play, stop when the guitar does the little lick and then come back in. I feel like that's going to be more motivating to learn, especially for, people who are just coming to it, at a later stage. And, I can understand for people, it can be frustrating if you're just starting with scales and that's all you're doing. You're like, this is not fun. Like it helps. Of course, I would never say it doesn't help. And, knowing where the notes are and being able to get to them comfortably, that is important. The finger work, the wrist work, proper posture, proper hand placement, that can be real important. Whether you're sitting down or standing up. For instance, I practice standing up because I'm always playing standing up, in the jam room or on stage. I'm always standing up. I record standing up, and I don't have my bass super low to look cool. No, and even on even in the live setting, my bass is where it is. Like I don't set it different just because it looks cool. I'm like, I have to have it up here because if it's not, it's uncomfortable and I can't play it. But I think that, like I said, I think one thing that may help a lot of people is, pick some songs you want to learn and start with that. Start with the technique as well, but there are plenty of very steady, simple bass lines in fantastic songs that can really give you that joy, of, like being in the band or knowing a whole song, that's, because part of music is not just learning, but it's performing. You want to perform.
One of the things that I tell my students is similar to what you just said. And if you want to play along with the record, what if it's a pretty heavy, Paul McCartney or James Jamerson or Chris Squire or something? You don't have to play note for note what they're playing on the record, but if you feel, sometimes even a couple notes per bar just to get the feel, and that way you can be in the band, like you say, and
yes.
and still do it without being overwhelmed by, oh my God, what's he doing? When you get to that point, like me, I was 13 years old sitting on my bedroom floor trying to play was it Black Dog, Led Zeppelin. What is he doing with the time? Is it the drums or is it it drove me crazy.
And what's tricky, I'll say this first. What's tricky about, stuff like Led Zeppelin or also Black Sabbath is that those guys almost never play the same thing twice. They're literally just riffing just like the guitar. But going back to something that you just said, the feel, I made a joke to a friend a little while ago. He's a guitar player, but he was having to fill in on bass for another friend of ours. And he was like, oh, I have to get used to this thing again. I got to remember how, he wasn't just like, oh yeah, he knows that it's a different animal. And I just made kind of an offhanded comment as a joke. And then later he came to me and was really struck by it. And I said, easy. I said, right hand drum stuff, left hand guitar stuff, or whichever you are, your plucking hand, whether a pick or fingers, many times that will be matching what the drums are doing. Because you're that rhythmic bridge. You're the bridge between the rhythm and the melody, and then you use the notes to help establish what the guitar is doing. So the rhythm with the drums and then the melody and the notes with the guitar. And it was something that honestly, again, when I said that I kind of got away from music and came back to bass, that was one of the things I was like, it just kind of hit me. And I was like, oh, and I just was so much more locked in with the drummer because because before I'd been playing bass, I was like part of the lead thing. Like I was writing songs like a guitar. So I was playing like that. But then I was like, oh, I can just lay back. Now I can feel that spot where the bass goes between the rhythm and the melody. And I've just really settled into that. And it's a great place to be.
It is because I've been playing bass like 40 years, so it's second nature, but it's a great idea to just take a step back and think about it and analyze it the way you just said. I love that because we've heard, we're the bridge between the rhythm and the rhythm and the harmony, but looking at it your way, I love that. I'm gonna dive into that.
I would say, who I'll go back to influences here real quick. Somebody else that I learned a lot of that from recently has been Carol Kay.
Oh,
I have gone way down the Carol Kay. I have a playlist, and it's a Carol Kay playlist, and it's just hit after hit after hit after hit, and it's like 3 hours long. It's so many songs. And I'm just like, the first time I listened to all of it, I was like, she did this song. She did this song too. She did this song too. And I've just really, because she can jam all over as much as she wants. But, but you hear her speak and she's like, no, but then you can just kind of swing it just a little and just really all that rhythmic stuff and just really relaxed and easy about it. And
she's a guitar player too.
Yeah.
And I interviewed her. She was very cool.
Yeah.
For bass players only.
I've always wanted to meet her.
Put her name in the search thing, but she not just all the records and Quincy Jones and Frank Sinatra and the Beach Boys, of course, but also like the Brady Bunch. That's her. When the bass goes doom 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 boom. That's her. That's Carol Kay. I was watching Jeopardy one time, like a year or so ago, and one of the categories was Carol Kay played bass on that.
Nice. That's great.
Oh, and she plays with a pick. You kind of hinted when you said 4-string, 5-string, and I know you play a lot with a pick. I'm thinking of things that piss bass players off. There are some videos on YouTube that I'm sure you're aware of some young guy with very short hair auditioning, and the stuff that was like 9 years ago when you were playing the with the pick. Do you do any stuff with your fingers?
I do on my own. I try to keep that skill. Try to keep my fingers warm and kind of jam around. I'll still put on, old Metallica records and kind of play through those, get them real warmed up, or old Iron Maiden. Now, the never-ending debate over, pick or fingers, which one's better or which one is, what? It's whatever serves the song. It's not one or the other all the time. It's whatever serves the song, tone wise, technique wise. Don't get me wrong. It's amazing to watch somebody like Billy Sheehan with both hands.
I've been thinking about him with the three fingers.
Just like, oh my God, dude, like you're insane. But then you look at somebody else, like let's say Bobby Vega, who is just so cool and just like cool. I don't know. And he still makes it sound super funky and it's got this weird scratch to it. And it's just, I don't know. So it's, and you couldn't say that either of those guys is wrong. You would never say that. It's whatever serves the song. Yeah. So anybody who says it's one way or the other is obviously missing something.
Absolutely. Yeah. I know both of those guys very well. Bobby is a hoot. Warwick used to have these bass camps in Markneukirchen, Germany.
Oh, right on. Yeah.
So Billy comes to me one night. He says, do you have some time? You want to get together tomorrow and I'll show you some stuff? Yeah.
Yeah. Yes,
like
please.
An hour and a half video. My son was there with me, and Bobby used to go to those things too. And he would give his master class at clinic, whatever. And then in between, he'd take the pick and just stick it up on his forehead. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Those were great. David Ellefson used to go. Abe Laboriel was there once.
Yeah. And again, well, as far as hard rock, like Dave Ellefson, fantastic bass player, but again, Megadeth is one of those bands. It's like, you kind of have to play with a pick. Like that's part of even if you could hit the notes, it's not going to sound right. You need a pick for that attack to go with the guitar.
Yeah, it's funny because Dave used to tell me, "Hey, I've got your funk bass book because I wanted to learn how to slap." Well, you don't do that with a pick, but I was very honored that he had my book. What about the future? Now that we're kind of sort of back to normal in the world, I hope.
Well, our plan is tour. We're trying to push this new album. We've got something really special, and we want people to hear it and we want people to know it. And so our tour, or our plan is just, sorting out tours this year, next year. You know, as far as writing songs, we'll probably take a hiatus, but when the inspiration strikes, I'm sure, nowadays with technology, it's very easy to just kind of record a riff and, keep it for when it's ready. And but yeah, I think now it's going to be we're focusing on tour. Like I said, we'll also continue to do the happy hour lives streams that we do on Fridays. But yeah, we're trying to hit the road.
My signature sign-off question is typically, what would you be if you weren't a bass player? But you're also a guitar player and a composer and a vocalist. So if you could just give me something outside of music, what would you be if you weren't a bass player or any kind of musician?
I don't typically think of that. It's one of those things where I'm like, I know what music means to me, and I know how important it is to my life. In order for me to be a normal person, I have to make music, because if I don't, I'm kind of an asshole, honestly. It's just this thing that I have to do in order to remain, normal. And I'm just so focused on being that and doing that. I don't often think what I would do otherwise, oddly enough.
Most people give me a very similar answer, and occasionally I'll get like Tommy Stinson from Guns N' Roses. Oh, I'd be a TV weatherman. Oh, I've always wanted to be. And Rhonda Smith, who played with Jeff Beck for the last, I don't know how many years. Oh, I'd definitely be in financial and stock market and trading and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So some people, a lot of people say a cook, but some people say, a puddle or unemployed or,
Yeah. Possibly unemployed.
Richard Bona. If I were not a bass player, I would be a bass player.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I just love the background there and the your northern.
The sun's coming out now.
Northern California, Oakland area.
Santa Cruz Mountains.
Okay.
Yeah, so I live in the trees, and I can ride my mountain bike all the way down to the beach if I want to.
That's great. Well, maybe I'll come visit you.
Yeah, check it out. It's beautiful.
Of Kingdom and Crown is the new album, Machine Head. Thank you so much, Jared MacEachern. Good luck and with the touring, and congratulations on all your success and everything else. Keep us posted on anything else that's going on. We will share it with these nice people here.
Will do. Thanks, John.
Thank you. You're watching ForBassPlayersOnly.com. I'm John Liebman, founder and first baseman. A lot of people think they're too old or it's too late for them to learn how to play an instrument. So I created ForBassPlayersOnly.com for people over 50 who want to play bass, because I believe you're never too old and it's never too late to experience the joy and the pleasure of making music. ForBassPlayersOnly.com. That's what we're all about. We'll see you here next week, same time, same place, right here at ForBassPlayersOnly.com. In the meantime, let's play bass.